I welcome you all in News and Views Bulletin at Tech TV. Today we are joined with Honorable Lisa Raitt, Deputy Leader Opposition. Also, today we are joined with 4 dynamic panelists: Asfanyar Wadiwala, long-time Conservative Party member and currently outreach to multicultural communities. We are also joined with Halima Sadia, who's a Tag TV anchor as well as human rights activist. We are also joined with Raitt Dagar, political activist and former PC outreach advisor. We have with us Ms. Kamini Singh, who's a social rights activist and also work for Commonwealth International. So welcome Honorable Lisa Raitt, and I invite panelists to ask questions. So we were talking about sort of complexities of multiculturalism. Multiculturalism is not one-way traffic in my humble opinion. It's a give and take.
Okay.
If I like my host Canadians, because I'm a new immigrant here, to eat samosa, I should eat pasta as well.
True. Sure.
So you are representing a very multicultural riding right now. Are you facing those sorts of challenges there?
I'm going to be absolutely frank with you. The one challenge that I find is the integration of everyone. If you take a look at the census data, and I spent some time the last couple of days looking at it, in Milton specifically, you can almost trace where the pockets are. So in one neighborhood, a couple of streets, there'll be 70% ethnic diversity. And in another place, there's going to be 4% ethnic diversity. And it's either all or nothing. And that's how our neighborhoods are developing in Milton. So I will go to events where I will only see members of the Pakistani community, of the Hindu community, of the Muslim community, of the Sikh community. That's all I'll see.
True.
And I will go to another event a day later, and all I will see are the Irish and the Italians and the Germans and everyone else. And that doesn't make sense to me, because I shouldn't be the only one crossing over the borders. There is one project, though, that actually transcends, and it's something called Miracle on Main Street, which is run by Tigerjeet Singh, his foundation, where he makes the very smart decision to bring in the school kids, because that is where the diversity really is going to be happening for us for the next generation. No matter where you live and what neighborhood, you're still going to be in a school that's going to have multiple faiths and multiple ethnicities. So Tiger does that on the first Monday, I think, in December every year. Big Ferris wheel. They shut down the main street in downtown Milton, and it's an opportunity. It's the only place where I see every face that I know exists in Milton. And we have to do more of that. That's what we have to do.
Yes.
Raitt, you were about to ask something about on multiculturalism. Please.
First of all, Honorable Lisa, we're proud of you as women.
Oh, thank you.
Congratulations on becoming the Deputy Leader of the Conservative Party of Canada. We're very proud of you.
Thank you,
and I think as a mother of 2, you are leading by example. So you're demonstrating to your boys what a woman should be like. And same thing, our boys are going to grow up in this beautiful, diverse country knowing that they're equal. Men or women are equal.
Yes.
What still troubles me in a way is the women political involvement. I mean, we look at the international chart and we see Uganda and Bolivia leading close to 63, 64%.
Yeah.
We're in a very diverse, very developed country. We work behind the scenes. I'm sure the ladies on the panel were very politically involved.
Activists,
but, you know, how would you address that problem? What's the existing percentage in Parliament? And as a woman leader, how would you encourage women who have political aspirations to get into the arena and to put their names forward?
It is. It's the biggest honor to put your name on a ballot, and it's also the most terrifying thing you can do, because you open yourself up to criticism. And I don't think any human appreciates that. Some of us have thicker skin than others, and maybe that's why women don't take that final leap. The strange thing about our system, the good thing about our system, is that before you run for a party, you need to win the nomination of the people in your community. So other countries, you're appointed. So some leader will say, this woman, this woman, this woman, so they can move
They have a quota.
They have a quota. They can do it. So they'll have more women. For us, you have to make it from the grassroots. And that's where we run into problems, because where are we from the ages of 25 to 40? Well, we're probably looking after kids, sharing in it. Men do work too, but primarily we're the ones who are making the doctor's appointments, we're the ones putting them off to school, we're the ones packing the lunches, asking the husband to help pack the lunch, whatever, we're trying to make it as a team. But certainly I would say in our society right now, women are doing a lot more of that. And my proof point is this. I used to do town halls on the telephone, and the reason why they were successful was because the moms would say to me, I love it that I can put you on speakerphone, I can hear what's going on in my community, but I'm making dinner at the same time, and I can give attention to the homework that's going on. So I'm involved. You can't hear me, but I'm there, and I really like that. And it gives people an outlet. So what we have to do is we have to make it easier for people who have other responsibilities in their lives that they feel strongly about to still have a part of the political process that doesn't involve going to 5 meetings a week where you're out of the house every single night, because nobody can do that. It's too difficult. If our kids are involved in sports, for example, because you want your children to do well, you have them in a variety of activities. So that's the dilemma. The solve is getting them involved slowly and making it easy for women. There's an adage in politics that men will ask a political figure to run. They'll say, I want to run. A woman has to be asked like 7 or 8 times to run. We have to convince them to come in to make that final step, whereas men think, of course I can do it. And women think, oh, how am I going to balance it? There's going to be so much time, and is it good for my family? Is it good for me? But we need to get more women there are two, right now what you see women who enter politics after their children are older, and you see women enter politics before they start having children. I was right in the middle. My kids were 6 and 3, and I am by no means anyone's idol on this one, because it was tough, no question about it. And I think I cried more than they cried. The boys are fine. They're going to be fine. Right. I missed a lot along the way, but that's okay. I made that choice. Now I feel like I'm convincing people not to run. I'm sorry about that, but that's a reality. But we need the women in that age group. We need the women between 35 and 50 in Parliament, in our legislatures, making really important decisions about what we want for our future, because we're raising the future in those moments. So we need to be there. We can't be an afterthought when I'm raising grandchildren, and it can't be before I have kids. You need everybody, but really want that mix. So that's who I'm going after. And as I said to you off camera, I am very proud that a woman in her 30s, I won't tell you how old because no one likes to be said how old she is, just ran for a seat on her local city council. She worked on my campaign leadership. She was fantastic. She got a little bit of the bug, and she talked to her husband, and she ran, and she won. She beat an incumbent. Fantastic. Very proud of her. Very proud of her. And having started there, as her kids get older, she'll be involved, and then someday maybe she'll run provincially or she'll run federally, and she will be a great asset to the country. So that's the way to do it. And also, find women in high school who are involved in their student governments and keep them involved in whatever way. Send them the information, have clubs that they can join in university, and keep some kind of pipeline for women, because otherwise you lose them along the way. But if you keep them in one pipeline, regardless of how much activity they're doing at any given time, if they're there, they always feel that they can come back because they belong to something. And that's kind of how I'm going to approach it going forward, and collect every name, collect every card, put them on a list, and keep them involved and active. Because if you show up at one meeting, you care, because that takes a lot of effort to show up even for one single meeting, and you don't want to lose them. So there's a lot of work involved with putting women in positions in political. There's a lot of work, and we have to be willing to do it.
Thank you.
If we're not going to appoint them, then we have to be willing to do the hard work and get them there. It may not be known, Stephen Harper, I was asked to run by Mr. Harper and Doug Finley, who was his director of political operations. in a seat that was abandoned by Garth Turner. He crossed the floor from Conservative to Liberal. And they needed somebody to run against him. And if we had gone through the normal nomination system, I wouldn't be sitting here today. But because it was a quick election and the board came in to talk to the members of my community and said, we have a candidate here, we'd like you to consider her, and I did end up getting the nomination in that way, I wouldn't be here. And I'm grateful that I am. So Mr. Harper figured it out. He does believe in grassroots, we all do, but we still need to, if we have a woman,
it's important. We need that extra push. Yeah.
It helps us.
Push,
See, feel better.
You second my thing that there has to be a man standing behind to ask you that yes, you are quite capable. You have to do it.
At this moment,
it
there
could be a woman leader like Lisa,
like you. I mean,
it's true, but you still need the man, unfortunately.
Society is together. I feel like we cannot. For me, it's very difficult to segregate. For me, it has to work as like to run a family. You need each and every person to participate. Similarly, when you are working in a political environment or in a professional environment, men and women have to work together to put each other up instead of putting because of certain reasons down.
I agree, but politics is inherently competitive, and we're going to be looking for the differences. And quite frankly, when you're running, a lot of it's going to be almost like central casting, meaning that I was perfect to run against Garth Turner because I was a woman, 2 young kids. I reflected the community. I was a professional. It was everything they wanted to contrast to the guy who crossed the floor.
Crossed the border.
But it takes the right leader to recognize the
The
talents
right
in these women. And a lot of our leaders right now, unfortunately, they don't push us to do so. I mean, I ran a nomination, and unfortunately, I wasn't successful provincially. But if you have the right leader, being a male in any situation, if they want to put a certain female candidate forward, they can push it and they can make it happen.
It's unfortunately the reality until we get critical mass. And when we have that critical mass of women in leadership positions, then it's all going to be equal. But until we're there, unfortunately, we have to recognize the challenge and work within it.
True.
But we're going to get there.
We're proud of you. We have you as a leader now. So hopefully
I'm here. And look how openly we're talking about it. Imagine, this is an open conversation. We're not all spouting off the fact that my leader's a feminist. We're talking about the reality of life. Because no matter the leader's opinion, you still have to deal in a grassroots nomination where they're going to say everything about you.
The deficit. That as per 2 years of period Justin Trudeau has passed, exactly 2 years and 2 days. What would be the exact figure in billions of today? The figures we are hearing is 22 billion to 30 billion, which is really terrible, and we are really scared. Who is going to pay and how we are going to adjust the budget and in how many years?
So the economic fall update just came out, and although it was thought that we would run a $30 billion deficit last year, it's going to come in around 18 billion, but it's still a lot more than the 10 billion that the Prime Minister had promised in the campaign. And the problem with the number is these expenses are expenses that are embedded in our federal system, meaning the departments are overspending, and it's going to be really difficult to have them stop spending in order to return to balance. It's not like you stop a project, you don't build a bridge, or you decide you're not going to go ahead with the purchase of a plane. That's not going to save you the money to bring you back to balance. Getting out of that hole is going to be really difficult, and tough choices are going to have to be made. And that's why we think the government should have a plan, at least, to come at a deficit. Because, to your second point, which is the most important, my kids are going to pay. And your grandchildren are going to pay. And the reason being is that as you continuously pile on debt, how much money you pay in interest goes up, and that interest is in your budget today, right? It's like if you had a credit card.
True.
You may have a giant balance that eventually you'll pay off, but every month you have that interest payment you have to pay.
Service.
And as your bigger debt gets bigger, that interest payment gets bigger, and it's going to start eating into stuff in your house.
True.
So in our case, if that interest gets bigger and bigger, healthcare gets compromised, defense gets compromised, whether or not you're going to have all the old age security pension you need, that gets compromised.
The seniors are.
All those things get compromised because we have too much interest payments that we have to make. And that's why the kids get hurt at the end of the day. It's much quicker than anyone anticipates. And they have to figure out a way to make money, and maybe their way to make more money is going to be taxing marijuana and taxing all other drugs. I don't know. But the last time I checked, no government seems to be able to run a business and make money, other than the LCBO. So maybe that's the area in which they're going in. But the federal government, trust me, there's nothing that a government can run better than the private sector. And we'll see what ends up happening, I think, in terms of how much tax they're really going to get out of it. But all I see are lots of deficits and less services for Canadians as a result. It doesn't go away. You can't put it in the back of your mind. You may ignore how big your credit card bill is, but you can't ignore how much money you pay per month on your interest.
On the interest.
That's what's dangerous. Like, imagine
and
if
what
you just...
would be the figure, roughly, in your opinion, in billions?
In billions.
As of today, in 2 years.
As of in the last 2 years, they probably racked up, I would say, about $36 billion.
Wow, beyond 30.
36 billion.
It's terrible.
At least, and then continuing on.
Why is he donating our hard-earned Canadian funds to the radical groups?
Well, again, you know, any government is going to do international development.
But that is not the radical groups.
No, it's true. We did, our radical group was helping mothers and children around the world. But in terms of the Liberals, their danger is if they continue to disproportionately fund foreign ventures, for whatever reason, maybe it's about getting a Security Council seat that they seem to want very much. That is going to be a problem because domestically, the vulnerable people like poor seniors, the working folks who barely make ends meet, they're going to be saying, you're giving an awful lot of money outside the country, what about us? And they are at that balance point right now where, you know, you can go on Facebook and you'll see a very long list of all of the foreign projects that the government is putting money into, and you will see a lot of senior citizens forwarding that around to each other saying, we haven't had a raise. We got a $2 raise last year per month. How does that pay for the increase in my hydro bill? How am I going to afford the cost of gas when it goes up because of the carbon tax? So it's a problem for them, and we'll continue to point that out to SB. We think it's important.
Give them a good mileage.
We will. And of course, as you point out, some cases they are giving money to, let me say, entities that we wouldn't be giving money to. Right.
They're dangerous entities, the terrorist groups.
Yep. You've got to be very careful in giving internationally. There's no question about it. Having had funds that I had to give out in the Labor Department, you rely upon the best advice and intelligence you can get to make sure that the money lands in the hands of the needy, not in the hands of those who seek to destroy.
Or destructing the world peace.
Yeah.
Kami, yes, please.
So first of all, good afternoon, and it's an honor to be in the panel here in the discussion. I came to Canada just 4 years back, and I would say I'm still a learner in this forum. I just have two simple questions to ask.
Yeah.
The first one is, what are the training and career enhancement opportunities that you will be enabling for the younger generations to enhance their skill, their potential, so that they can take advantage of the opportunities, not only domestic but international?
Right, yeah.
That's one question.
Yeah.
The second one, I know we have been discussing about women, but it is in general, what can be done to increase the participation of women, not only in political but also in economic opportunities in the country, so that we can have more like yourselves.
Yeah, it's very true. We have to think about where we want our economy to go. And I think this government, the Trudeau government, they understand that the future is going to be in tech, the future is going to be in services, and I get that. But the future is also in our resources, because the one thing that Canada has that no other country in the world has is this incredible bounty of resources. Interestingly enough, the areas of growth in the past number of years have been in the trades. It's not just professional areas that people are seeking educated folks in. So welders, electricians, and the welding of today is very different from the welding that you remember from the 1940s or the 50s. Like, women are really good at welding. I once did a welding demonstration, and after I did it, I said to the guy, I said, that's like putting icing on a cake. I used to decorate cakes all the time. And they said, it's exactly like that. In fact, women are really good at welding, but they never think about it as an opportunity. And I'm going to upsell welding for 1 second. The starting salary is $72,000 a year. That's incredible.
Wow.
What an incredible career that you can have and be your own business person and do that. So there's lots of opportunities for women specifically, for young people in general, that you may not think of, because normally you end up in welding because your father, your uncle, somebody you knew was in it, but it's a really nice niche area that should have and enjoy more publicity. I think you can't go wrong in 2 areas in the coming years, my personal opinion, if I can give it to any moms and dads out there wondering what their kids should do. The 2 most sought out professions right now are people who know how to code, computer engineers.
Wow.
Or,
We're doing robotics,
or-
my kids.
Amazing.
Very good,
I'm in
very good.
IT, so yeah.
Yeah, or sales.
Sales.
Because you need to sell the product.
Right.
And for some reason, we're not very good at creating Canadian sellers. I know it sounds very bizarre, but when you get to the VP level of sales in any organization, we're importing them from the United States. So there's a great opportunity for kids who may not be technologically involved. They may not love it. Some kids don't like it. But if they're a good talker and they enjoy people, sales is a great route for them to go down. And so I did a lot of economic roundtables across the country, and that is my distillation. So my kids, 16 and 13, love for them to go into computer science, not going to happen. If they're going to go into business, I want them to do sales.
Wow.
I want them to interact.
Sales and marketing.
And what is politicians?
They
But
sell.
salespeople, right? We're selling our policies.
policies.
You have to like dealing with people. My first start was working at the Dairy Queen in Sydney, Nova
Wow,
Scotia. I
wow.
worked there for 17 years. I know customer service. I get it.
Beautiful.
And that's that's the normal part. So that's where I would definitely put kids in. Professional degrees are always going to be the high notch in terms of where we aspire for our kids to go, but it's not necessarily. There are so many unemployed orthopedic surgeons. Can you believe that? Unemployed orthopedic surgeons, because we have too many in our system.
Wow.
So you can have years and years and years and hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt and still not be able to get that job at the end of the day. So, the days where we would say, just follow your dream to our kids, that still makes sense, but we really do have to help them follow their dream and make sure that they understand that the world does need to have certain kinds of careers. And, wish them the best, but it's our job as parents, I think, to help
shape their career.
help steer.
Yeah.
Help steer, not push.
I would
Pushing
like
is
to
bad.
ask here another thing, which
Yeah.
is when we talk about assimilation of the immigrants, we are putting so
Yeah.
much money towards that. Why don't we put into the guidance and bridging of the skills they have? We talk about that we have doctors who are not having the
Yes.
jobs. But the problem is, we still, if we go to walk-in clinic, if we go to a family doctor, we still don't have that. So what are the problems? Why don't we bridge those people
Yeah.
who are coming, and with the less input, we can get more output
Yeah.
through that? So what you are planning for that? If we want electricians, we want, why we insist when we bring the immigrants that they should have the certain qualification? Then where are we heading to?
You're bang on. That is exactly the issue. And in Milton, go door knocking in Milton and you'll meet people who were professors and doctors in Pakistan a couple years ago, or in India, or wherever. And now they're waiting and waiting after they after they have done their qualifications here in Canada. And that's just wrong. The Minister of Immigration just announced that they want to bring in 300,000 immigrants per year. We're struggling with having our professionals now find places in Canada, in Toronto. And I would invest, or I would recommend to Andrew that we invest on exactly what you're talking about. Jason Kenney did that. He started down that road of working with those provincial associations to allow the recognition of foreign credentials. Yes, you have to make sure everyone's safe. We all get that. That's fine. Understand the procedures. But the body's the body. if you're a doctor, for example. Accounting is accounting if you're an accountant. Numbers are numbers. Engineering is engineering. And as long as you pass the tests, there should be a means by which to get that certification and start working very quickly. Because if you're coming to the country, you're coming because you want a better life, not a life where you wait for 10 years to practice. You know, you give everything up. Well, you give everything up.
And your path is lost.
Yeah.
And on the top of it, isn't it better for our economy also that instead of investing so much money, we have like we can break that isolation of work through that and accommodate those people who are capable of doing certain, I won't say that equivalent to that, they can go a little step down or equivalent, like I mean at least they feel like motivated enough after 5 years to be where they want to be, you know.
The worst thing we can do is bring people to welcome people into the country and not give them a purpose, and especially for kids. If the kids don't, and that's where you end up with radicalization. That's where they end up falling into watching the internet and seeing stuff on there that they think is right, because they're not happy with what's happening in their lives, either those born here or those who come from away. That's unfortunately what happens, right? The last thing you ever want is a bunch of teenage boys, because I have 2 of them myself, with a lot of time on their hands and a lot of access to grind and access to the internet. And you know, what they can come up with is amazing at the end of the day.
Yeah, coming back to the Federal Conservative Party of Canada, I'm very eager to hear from you, being our deputy leader, when the nomination poly is going to be announced, because we are at the fag end of 2017. And I would also like to ask you, what about our successful MPs who could not make it in 2015? Will they be acclaimed? They deserve to be acclaimed than to fight the nomination with all turncoats and other people, what happened in the provincial PC party?
It's a very good question. I can tell you where we are now, and the decision was made last week and the party communicated it. So it may be a little bit technical, but I'll explain it the best I can. We're starting with the ridings that we currently hold, where we have sitting members of parliament. 92 ridings
have been identified.
Correct.
Yeah.
92 ridings. And in those ridings, there is an invitation now for whomever in that riding with a sitting member of parliament to let the party know by application by December 15 if they wish to challenge the member of parliament for the nomination for the Conservative Party of Canada. Because we believe in grassroots.
True.
That doesn't often happen here in Ontario. It happened once, David Tilson's riding up in Caledon. It happens a lot in Alberta because you tend to win when you're a Conservative in Alberta almost automatically. So the battle is for the nomination. So until December 15, if somebody has a desire to represent the Conservative Party of Canada and wants to challenge the sitting MP, they may do so. They put their application in. And then the nomination, we have promises from the party. The nominations will all be concluded by May of 2018. So that'll be all done.
So it will be nominations and no acclamation?
Well, if nobody challenges the sitting member of parliament, then it's an acclamation. And then those members of parliament don't have to worry about being challenged in 2019 as we run up to the election. Because we need to have stability, SB, you know that.
I know, I can understand.
We need to have stability.
Definitely.
So by May of 2018, we will have all of our captured ridings will have their nominated candidate for 2019. And then we can go to the ridings where we don't currently hold, and we will start the nomination processes there.
Over there.
And in the meantime, I'm always looking for people. If anyone has an interest in seeking a nomination in a riding that's held or not held, I'm here to help, facilitate, put you on the right path, and encourage you in your democratic right to go down that path.
Very good.
So I'm happy to do that. But more importantly, we have a policy convention this year. It's in August of 2018. It's in Halifax, Nova Scotia. And that's where the issues that you and I were talking about, that's where that comes to a head. That's where we decide what we're going to run on in 2019. It's going to be a really important conversation.
We are all looking forward to attending the
same. Lots of local meetings will talk about policy issues, and it's an opportunity and hopefully something online so that you can as well put your voice into things that are important.
Very good.
So thank you for the timely question. I almost forgot to mention that, which is
It
breaking
was
news.
in my mind that to ask you, being our deputy leader,
Yeah.
and lots of people from the grassroots level asking us,
Yeah.
okay, what is happening with the Conservative Party, how they are going to nominate.
Yeah.
So I said, definitely I'm going to ask you this question today.
Open nominations, we're not going to be appointing. Open nominations, and some folks like Lois Brown, who was our
She has
former member of
announced.
parliament,
She- I
she
went
has
there,
announced
yeah.
that she's seeking it. And my friend Carrie Lynn Finley out in Vancouver, she has announced that she's seeking the nomination in White Rock, Surrey, which is going to be a by-election on December 11th.
11th.
So yeah, we'll lots of open contested nominations. Of course, I'm pulling for Carrie Lynn because I worked with her, and I like Lois because I
Yeah,
worked
Lois,
with her.
she's a
And
pillar
they're
from
women. Notice
Newmarket.
the pattern.
She's a pillar from Newmarket, I would
Right.
say.
Yeah.
Lewis
So
is.
as we are talking about nomination process, I would like to ask again, as we have perception that every government goes through 8 years.
Right.
So what are the chances of Conservative Party defeating in terms of
Right.
Liberals?
Yeah, it's yes, you could say that it's 8 years, but normally it takes 8 years for the population to get sick of a government. I think this government is going to be tiring the population a lot quicker.
Sooner.
I
Maybe.
think it's going to be sooner. It's all in their hands. It's how much angst that you cause in the population. And right now, especially from the ethics point of view, and the fact that the stuff we talk about in Ottawa isn't necessarily the stuff that Canadians want to talk about. It's not always about your socks. It's not always about selfies. It's a lot to do with what jobs are my kids going to have in the future? What are the deficits? How do we balance individual rights with what our society is going to be? How do we get more women involved in politics and positions of power? Other than having the Prime Minister speak on our behalf as women at all of these conferences that he seems to get invited to all the time. I would rather see the women go there and talk about it. I mean, I don't remember Ronna Ambrose getting invited to these places, and yet she was a true leader.
She was
female
great leader.
Yeah,
Great
right?
leader.
So,
And how to make Justin Trudeau one-term Prime Minister.
yeah, well, Denny Cordair lost in Montreal last
By
night.
a woman.
Let's buy a woman. So
See,
let's
so-
set the same
Hopeful.
example. He
That's
defeated
good.
himself because
True.
people grew tired
We are
of
very
him
happy.
being arrogant and bombastic in their perception, and they grew tired of him.
Right.
And that's what happens when you grow tired of a government. And my job in opposition is to highlight for the Canadian public the chinks in the armor, the weaknesses in this government, and hopefully they'll see how we see them.
I would like to put one more question,
Yes.
which we were discussing before, is this that we know that intellectual work and rational reasoning is very important, but we cannot beat the vote bank with intellectual and rational thoughts.
Right.
What Stephen Harper did was very rational, but
Yeah.
he was thrown out
Right.
because of that. He was
Right.
taken very bad.
Yes.
So I see that. How would we see that? How would we balance that?
Yeah.
That rationality or vote bank? What
Very
would you
good
say?
question. And if you take a look at it, Canada's almost gone from one end of the pendulum to the other end of the pendulum, because for Stephen Harper, it was about balanced budget to maybe the detriment of other things that we should have been doing as well. We made some mistakes. We should never have cut the veterans' offices. That just, you saved a couple of $1 million, and for what? It wasn't worth it because it was viewed by society as something that we weren't comfortable with, and we paid for that at the ballot box. But on the other end, we have what Justin Trudeau is doing, which is showing no care for the economic well-being of the country, the economic safety of the country, should we encounter difficulties that are not of our making. Harper was able, with Jim Flaherty, wonderful man, was able to protect the country from what was happening in the meltdown around the world. Trudeau can't, because we're so overexposed in terms of having too much debt. And we are unable, what got us through those recession years was the fact that our mines were still functioning, our forestry was still working, our oil was still pumping.
Yeah.
But Trudeau's making it really difficult for us to utilize those resources anymore. So we may end up with big deficits and no way to raise money, which is the worst. So your expenses go up and your revenues go down,
Yeah.
and we can't recover. So what people will see at the end of the day is despite the idealistic world that he lives in, meaning Mr. Trudeau, of wanting to have equality for all and a pure, clean environment and no pollution, and we all love that. We all love that. Just as we like with Mr. Harper having a safe fiscal house in order. But the reality is it's in the middle where we have to exist. And we have to drag these guys back into the middle, and we have to make sure we find ourselves in the middle. And it's not liberal light, it's not being a weak conservative. It's about recognizing Canadians do want it all. They do want it all, and as their representative, I want to provide it to them the best that I can. So we're going to have to talk about our fiscal responsibility, but we got to talk about environmentalism. We have to talk about feminism. We have to talk about those things that Canadians care about, and tolerance and diversity and inclusion. Like, those things are really important, and we have to talk about them, but we'll do it in a conservative way, meaning we're not going to blow the bank in trying to get to those places, and we're not going to force our ideas onto other people in order to get their way.
True.
And I think that's our path, but that's just me talking. I'll have my say when we get to our policy convention. I hope that I can sway our
Definitely, we are going
conservative
to.
members. But I have great faith in Andrew Scheer. He is my buddy. He and I got along very, very well. I really like him as a human being. He's a great dad. He's kind. And once you get to know him, and we've got 2 years so you can get to know him, you'll realize that we offer an alternative that is far more attractive than what Mr. Trudeau
is
has
offering.
given us for the past 4 years. So that's why we can win in 2 years.
I mean, we're talking about the economy, and we
Yeah.
all know, I mean, any economy depends on small business.
Yeah.
And it really scares me. And you're right. I think any voter is going to get sick of the Liberal government sooner than later, because we know now. I mean, I want you to explain it to us in more depth.
Sure.
He's introducing a new tax for small business owners.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you see us doing that? And like, how do you see small business owners competing
Yeah.
even more harder with the big corporations out there?
Yeah, so simply put, they're spending too much in Ottawa, and they know that they have to bring in more money. The way they bring in more money is squeezing the taxpayer. They can't squeeze any more on the individuals because they already did that their first year. So they've turned to business, and they're going to squeeze business. And they started out by saying that small businesses were just shams for people to avoid paying personal taxes. That did not go over well. And the ministers had to backtrack. In fact, I think he has been dealt a fatal blow to his career as a result, because he continuously went down the path of calling doctors and dentists and engineers and small business people, pizza shop owners, spa owners.
And new immigrants too.
New
you know.
immigrants too.
Their
Take tax
livelihood
sheets.
depends on their small businesses.
Think about folks who run convenience stores, right?
Exactly.
And they're in there 16 hours a day, and it's the husband and the wife and the daughter. She'll probably work the cash register. But that daughter will end up being a doctor one day because she understands the value of hard work. Now, they're working hard and they're trying to save money, and then a new tax comes on them. And the problem that Mr. Trudeau has, and why it matters more so than, and why he's really not listening, is he's forgetting what's happening in Ontario with hydro going up, with all these new taxes that Kathleen Wynne has put on us and the higher expenses, making business really difficult in general. Minimum wages going up, Canada pension costs are going up, everything is going up. And now they're adding another tax on top of it. And at that point, Canadian business owners will say, enough. And anyone associated with the Liberal brand, we're done with you.
True.
We're done with you. And it is detrimental to people's lives. And their financial planning that they probably created when they started their business 15 years ago, you might as well just throw it out the window because of the way they changed the laws. And that's causing emotion. Like, I've not seen emotion like this in a long time. People come to my round tables and they're crying.
Of course.
They're crying because they're terrified of what the future brings, and new immigrants. Exactly. I mean, how can you aspire? Basically, they're saying you're better off working for someone than it is to take a risk, because we're not going to let you make a lot of money if you want to take a risk. And who doesn't want to do better? And by the way, thank God for new Canadians coming who want to take that risk and drive our economy, because they punch above their weight disproportionately. They're the ones that are doing the hard work. to make sure that small businesses are working and they're serving clientele that we don't even know exist. A small shop opened up in Milton this week, Parahan, and it's catering to high-end brides from Pakistani culture.
Wow.
And the stuff is gorgeous. I feel like I'm doing a commercial for them now. The stuff is gorgeous, but that's a market that I never knew existed that you would have to know because you're from that part of the world. What designers to choose, what people will like. It's not just about going to Pakistan and buying a bunch of dresses and coming back. You need that understanding, and that's a small business that deserves to do well because Ursula's professional. She's got an accounting degree, and she decides to put it all into her dream of owning a shop. And why should the government come in and make it more difficult for her and say, I don't think you should make that much money. I think you should give more to us. No, keep it. They should have it. They take the risk.
Well, I'm glad we have a strong opposition to hopefully advocate on behalf of
absolutely, you do.
small business owners.
And thank you for reminding me because Andrew Scheer, he, as you can tell from his advertisements and his ads, he is definitely there for small business. There's no question in my mind. He is there for small business. He's the only one that's going to speak for them on that stage.
Thank you.
For sure.
So I'll just ask a simple question again.
Yeah.
I'm an immigrant to this country. So when we come here, we do have our parents back home. Sometimes some of our parents, they are actually very much dependent on us.
Yeah.
So when we apply for PR, we are welcome to the country.
Yeah.
They do come on visits.
Yeah.
I have an understanding that we can apply for their PR as well, because some of them, they are just left alone.
Yeah.
And we want to bring them in as well. So is there can be done something about easing the policy to bring your parents, if they are dependent on you, to the country as well?
Family reunification is what it's called. And we did, it's the number one issue in my riding, actually, in terms of wanting to make sure that you bring the family together. And it's part of the mix, right? So we always put aside a certain amount of immigration for those who come in through the economic route. Is about 65%. And then you have folks who come in through the refugee, which is about 10%. And the remaining is usually family reunification, which is an important part. And it does take a long time, but it takes a long time because we're not working quickly enough in Ottawa. Like, the backlog is because the applications aren't being processed. So Michelle Rempel, who is our shadow minister on immigration, she believes the system is broken under its own weight right now because of the changes that are being brought in and the lack of smart funding on how to fix them. So what we need to make sure that we do is get rid of the backlog so that your parents don't have to wait as long for them to come in, because through the PR system to bring your parents over, I mean, you have to show you can look after their health care, you have to show that that they're going to have a place to live, all those things which you sign off on.
Exactly.
So basically you become the sponsor and you have responsibility, and that should be something easy to deal with. And I agree with you, and the frustration is that we have such, unfortunately, a wait list and a backlog in Ottawa. And as we bring in more and more refugees through other channels, either legal ones or the ones like are opening up on the borders where we have people living in trailers, that pushes your parents even further down the list. And that's why we say that the system is broken. They broke it. I fully lay this at the feet of Justin Trudeau. In their attempts of being good, in their attempts of wanting to do the right thing, so they say, they actually have made quite the mess.
Yeah, it's like a frustration for us, because whereas we are staying here for a better future for our kids, but back home, back in the mind, we think, oh, we have left our parents back who is not in that good. I mean, sometimes they are just dependent on us.
Oh, yeah.
So, yes.
It's a sandwich generation, right? You have to look after your parents, and unfortunately yours are a world away. And you want to have them with you. And it fully makes sense. But we can get to the place where we process these things a lot quicker. And we do bring in a certain amount a year, but we just got to get to them. So
this will help.
It's a great question.
Lisa, you being our deputy leader of our Conservative Party, I would like to request you once again, I even referred that matter in Ottawa last week, to consult our shadow minister, Peter Kent, MP, to grill the critics, what you call the ethics commissioner.
Right.
She has taken 3 extensions by Trudeau, but she has failed to investigate Trudeau's case of Aga Khan.
Right, yeah. Yeah, so there's a number of files that are open. It's his trip last year to the Aga Khan that he didn't report. This government has a tendency to
conflict
get
of interest
caught.
is there.
Well, they only report their stuff after they get caught by the reporters. So the Aga Khan was because somebody looked at the flight manifest and realized that a Canadian plane went to the Bahamas. And then they said, well, he was on this island. And then the reporter said, well, how did he get there? And they said, well, the private helicopter. And that's when it all got our attention. In the case of Bill Morneau, it was Elizabeth Thompson from CBC followed up on him saying that he had a villa in France and realized it wasn't in his ethics disclosure. And when she followed up with his office, 2 days later, he reported it to the ethics commissioner. So I don't know how you forget these things.
Or with us, remove the ethics commissioner.
Well, I'm going to speak. You know what, Aspie, you may not agree with me. She's not the problem. The problem is the act is the problem. However, the other problem is Trudeau should really have a new ethics commissioner.
Yeah, high time, because 3
Absolutely.
extensions are not acceptable to Canadians.
And you know what? She's a very experienced bureaucrat, which is one way of saying she's been around for a long time.
True.
And she may want to retire. In fact, she does, because she
has
said
kept a big cold freezer. She's putting all the cases of Trudeau into the cold freezer.
Well, she's got a big budget and a lot of people who work for her. And I've been investigated 3 times by the ethics commissioner, and I've been clean every time. But they take too long.
So please convey our deep concern about this matter.
I will. Yeah, we'll definitely. We've got so much more to talk about on conflicts of interest.
Please keep on grilling them.
We will, because they don't like it.
True.
You can see the faces of the MPs behind
we
as
saw
they
the
answer
question
the question.
last week, and we were really happy
like
that our Conservative Party is really grilling everybody.
Yeah. We're having a little bit too much fun, I will admit. We're having too much fun, but
True.
yeah.
Thank you very much, Honorable Lisa Raitt, and
you.
we are very grateful, and especially you took time to speak to panelists from diverse background. And I believe in our growing multicultural society, there are so many faces within multicultural communities that can guide our political parties, that can guide our governments in terms of taking them to right directions in our environment of political correctness particularly. And our TAG TV's policy is to create dynamic debates, and you made our day today.
Well, you made mine. Good question. Tough questions from everybody, and a great debate on feminism in our new world. So I appreciate that. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
for coming.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
Thank you for
It's a
joining
pleasure
us.
having you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And viewers, thank you for joining our talk with Honorable Lisa Raitt.